Thank you very much, Rabbi Zalman Duchman, the son of our dear Rabbi Shalom Duchman. Thank you, everybody who's gracing us with your presence tonight. Thank you to our dear host and hostess. Thank you to Dr. Berry, and thank you to Hashem for giving me and us the privilege of being here for such a monumental institution, organization. Certainly the oldest tzedakah institution in history, no? 236 years old. 236 years old. Now, usually, if you tell me about a yeshiva that's 236 years old, I'm like, oh my God, the deficit. Right? I think the longest yeshiva in history was the yeshiva in Pumbedisa, Babylonia, today's Iraq. It existed for close to 1,000 years. You can only imagine the deficit. And here there's a charity institution connected to Israel. Right? You know the old joke about Israel. When Israel had a horrible, horrible economy, the Knesset got together for an emergency meeting. What do we do? What do we do? And one old Yid gets up. He says, I have a brilliant idea. Let's declare war on America. We'll be like Japan and Germany. America will wipe us out like Japan and Germany. Then the Americans feel guilty. And they will revive us and resurrect us and turn us into a super powerful world economy like Germany and Japan. That's the idea. Another old Jew gets up and says, but I have a serious problem. What happens if we win? This has been one of the greatest problems for the Jewish people. Unfortunately, 2,000 years of exile taught us how to lose. We don't know how to win. If you look at the history of Israel from 1967 till today, we have a very hard time winning. As one Jew once said, when a Jew makes a fist, the next step is Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Al-Khay. Sorry for existing, sorry for living, sorry for breathing. This has been the greatest crisis of the Jewish people, I would say, in the modern era. We know how to lose, we don't know how to win. We know how to think exile, we don't know how to think redemption. We know how to kvetch. We don't know how to be victorious. It's the greatest crisis Israel is facing today. The miracle of Colel Chabad, founded in a little shtetl in Belarus called Liozna, by the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shnei Zalman of Liadi, the author of Tanya, the author of Shulchan Aruch Harav, the founder of Chabad, one of the greatest, most seminal thinkers in the history of Judaism, the Alter Rebbe. And he founded a tzedakah for poor Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. This is before Zionism was created. This is 100 years before Herzl existed. This is the first chalutzim, the first Hasidim who went up to Eretz Yisrael. It wasn't called Israel then. It was called Eretz Yisrael, Tov Kuf Lamed Zayin. That's 1777, a year after the United States of America was established, July 76. Chabad movement was established the same year, because Chabad democratized Kabbalah and Hasidus. And a year later, Colel Chabad was founded. The Alter Rebbe wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. He stayed behind. And a few years later, he founded Colel Chabad in 1788. 1788, Tovkuf Memches. And it's incredible, 236 years later, the tzedakah is going strong. I don't know if the Alter Rebbe, well, he had a prophetic vision, so he probably knew that the budget will be close to $180 million. But I wondered about it, because, to raise $180 million a year, people usually go to university for 29 years. They get like 3 PhDs in fundraising and administration and finance and figuring it out. Now look at Shalom Duchman. I don't even know if he knows how to spell out the word PhD. Okay? I don't know. How in the world does this man, whom I love, but look at him, how in terms of fundraiser, how does he raise more money than most people? They schlep around and they have these books. So today they already came together with all these fancy books, but when he started, I remember, okay? No books, nothing. He gave you a hug and give me the check. Okay? I don't even know what a credit card is. And he raises more money than most. I'll tell you the answer. The answer is because he's a soldier of the Rebbe. And a soldier has no ego. It's not about him. So that's why you can't insult him. Most people when they fundraise, they're like skid. What if the guy says no? He doesn't care. He doesn't hear the word no. He doesn't hear. There's no ego. It's not personal. You didn't tell me no. You told your own neshama no. It's your problem. Go to therapy. The fact that you said no, you need help, it has nothing to do with me. Most I know a lot of fundraisers. They go in, it's like, oh my God, then can I ask for how much am I going to ask for? If I ask for too much, he'll think I'm crazy. He'll throw me out of the office. Rabbi Duchman, it doesn't exist. He's just a soldier. He's a channel. Once you're a channel, you could fundraise ad infinitum because it's nothing to do with you. There's no ego there. It's very fascinating. You can't get a PhD in that. For that, you have to have a Rebbe, you have to learn Chassidus, you have to be an Eved Hashem. You have to be a servant of God. That's the power. I met Rabbi Shalom Duch when I was a little kid. We used to push together by Fabrengens. We stood right near each other at the Lubavitcher Rebbe's public gatherings, Shabbos and Yom Tov. I pushed him, he pushed me. What we both learned at that time is that the mission is much bigger than the individual. And when you're a channel, then miracles happen through you. So 236 years later, a tzedakah organization, not only without a deficit, but literally growing in disproportionate ways with unfathomable comprehension of what it achieves today, distributing literally millions of dollars and with very little bureaucracy, which is very rare for Jewish organizations. You know how bureaucracies work? You send an email, a week later you get back an email, we're going to discuss having a meeting in a year. At the meeting, they come to a conclusion that there's going to be another meeting after Labor Day when people come back from vacation. At that meeting, they decide that we have to convene a new committee to figure out what to do about the crisis of the meeting. 10 years later, you're still trying to get through your thing. So while everybody was making meetings on Jewish continuity and assimilation and issues, and different federations and organizations and summits and bringing down scholars to figure out the issue, the Rebbe is like, every day you're losing millions of Jews. Stop with your meetings, stop with your conferences, stop with your statistics. I don't care about your statistics. He created an army to go revive Yiddishkeit around the world. So there's very little tolerance for bureaucracy because bureaucracy becomes a prison. Churchill said people create institutions to facilitate their dreams, and then they become prisoners of those institutions. And that's what happens in a lot of places. It happens with synagogues, it happens with schools, it happens with organizations. We become prisoners of the institutions we created to facilitate our dreams. I have to say that Colel Chabad is one of those institutions. It doesn't run like an institution. It runs like a chassidische Fabrengen, which means in good ways and in incredible ways, which means, okay, the young generation wants to make it organized and all that, which is a good thing, and they have all these bitcoins and credit cards showing. But as he said, his father wants a check. Go tell him that checks, have already, Aleim Hashalom, etc. Oh, Yeshakayach. So it's really, and you think about the work, and really you have here the core of the Rebbe's philosophy, the Alter Rebbe's philosophy, that the way to connect with Jews is without judgmentalism. Without judgmentalism. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, what you believe, and you learn this from the enemy. Unfortunately, if you'll ask Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran, what type of Jew do you target? What type of Jew did you want to kill on October 7th? What type of Jew does your missile target? What will Iran answer? This type of yarmulke? A Barcelino hat, a Streimel, a left-winger, a right-winger, no yarmulke, an atheist, an agnostic, a Hasidic Jew, a Litvish Jew, a Yeshiva Jew, a Reconstructionist Jew, modern Orthodox? Our enemies know very well the truth, that a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. Sadly, we always don't know that truth. Somebody once asked the Kloisenberger Rebbe who survived Auschwitz, he lost a wife and 11 children. What's the meaning of the verse? We say it on Shabbos from Tehillim, Hashem Yispar B'chsoiv Amim. God will count according to the writings of the nations. What does that mean? Hashem celebrates Rosh Hashanah on January? I thought Rosh Hashanah is like a God's thing. No, Hashem Yispar, he has his own New Year's. Hashem, what's Hashem Yispar B'chsoiv Amim? So the Kloisenberger Rebbe, and unfortunately he experienced this, he said, I'll tell you what it means. It means when Mashiach is going to come very speedily, he's going to want to bring all the Jews back to the Holy Land. So he's going to have a list, right? So this is before Google. So he's going to come to the community, any community, And he's going to meet the head of the community, and he's going to say, could you give me a list of all the Jews so I could bring them back to the Holy Land? So the leader is going to bring him a list, and it's going to be a very short list. So Mashiach is going to say, what about your brother-in-law? Nay, he's a guy. What about your neighbor? He's not Jewish, he's an anti-Semite. What about your other neighbor? I don't like him, I hate his guts. He's the Gabbai, but I hate him. What about the other guy? He's not really Jewish, he's a mamzer, whatever. This list is, he goes to another community, and again, the list is very short. This guy is not a real Jew, this guy I don't like, this guy I don't want him to come back, this guy is anyway a paradim, this guy is B'chlal a terrorist, this guy I hate his guts, he's a ganav, a gazlin, an idiot, whatever it is, I don't trust him. Everybody will have a very short list of who's a real Jew, because Mashiach wants real Jews. So Mashiach is going to say, you know what, Hashem yispa b'chsay v'amim. I think I'm going to go ask the Gentiles, who's a Jew. I think I'm going to go ask the list from the Gentiles, who's a Jew. Because there's a truth there. And the truth is that behind all of the differences, and even the arguments, there is an quintessential sanctity at the core of Knesset Yisrael, which pervades every single Jew. It's what the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, articulated in the Tanya when he wrote that every soul of a Jew is a chelek elokah mimal mamish. It's a derivative of divine consciousness. It's not even about what the Jew chooses or doesn't choose. It's not if the Jew is religious or not. A Jew who has the schus to learn Torah and observe mitzvahs is living his inner or her inner core. But the core is there. And if you don't believe us, may oivai techakmeini. Ask the Hamasniks, Yamach Shemam. Ask Dr. Mengele, Yamach Shemam, when he made his selection, if he asked if you're a Babave, if you're a Vishnitzer, if you're a Lubavitcher, if you're a modern guy, if you believe, if you're a communist, if you're a they don't care. You have Jewish blood flowing in your sinews. You are the vermin of the earth and deserve to be exterminated. Our enemies understood this, and we don't understand this. Well, it's the secret of Colel Chabad. Colorblind. You're a Jew. You're good enough to be targeted for hatred and extermination. You're good enough to be loved, embraced, cherished, and seen for your true, authentic sanctity, even if you still should grow and ought to grow. If you ever went to San Francisco, you visited the redwood trees, the sequoias. You ever saw the sequoias? Some of them are 3,000, 4,000 years old. That means they were there during the times of Mesushelach, Noach, Yosef. They're older than Moses, for heaven's sake. My God, those trees have seen a lot. Sequoias, redwoods. And scientists, a few years ago, tried to understand how deep are the roots. How do trees withstand storms, tsunamis, infections, bacteria, forest fires, 4,000 years? How do trees experience such longevity? They supposed that the roots of the sequoias must go down maybe hundreds of feet in order to be able to have such a foundation to withstand every climate change and storm throughout 4 millennia. When they developed the technology to be able to see what is happening on the subterranean layers of the roots of the trees, they were shocked. Most redwoods, their roots don't go deeper than 4 or 5 feet. That became senseless. How with roots 5 feet deep can you live for 4,000 years? You know how many infections, bacteria, insects, mammals, all types of weathers. How? And then they figured it out. And it's incredible. What the sequoias lack in depth, they make up in breadth. This is how the roots of a sequoia work. Open your hearts. As the roots begin to emerge from the seed, and they kick out their legs, and they come down and start developing roots, they go deeper, just a few feet. But then, when they see or when they sense that there are roots of another sequoia, they extend in breadth, and they interconnect and become intertangled and intertwined with the roots of another sequoia in breadth. And you can have 50 or 100 sequoia trees whose roots are literally interconnected, integrated and intertwined with each other, hugging each other. What they don't have in depth, they have in breadth. Now a storm, a tsunami, a fire, bacteria, infections can kill one tree, can kill 2 trees. But when you have 100 trees, one, they have no chance. When I saw this, I'm like, I got it. Who are the sequoias of history? Who are the redwoods of history? The Jewish people. What is the secret of our longevity? Look at the sequoias. The answer is the sequoias know the secret. Above the earth, every tree is distinct and unique. It has its own personality, its own character, its own chemistry, its own DNA. Subterranean, you go deep down, all the roots are hugging each other. And I'm like, that's it. The Jews are the sequoias of history. Above earth, everybody is different. 2 Jews, 29 opinions. I once heard from the Rebbe myself at a Fabrengen, the Lubavitch Rebbe had a very good sense of humor. And he once said, why is it that in Hebrew we have a funny greeting? I say to you, Shalom Aleichem, and you say, Aleichem Shalom. Why don't you just say, Shalom Aleichem? Imagine in English, I say, good evening, and you say, evening good. How are you? You are how? What's up? Up what's? Bis Meshiga. Meshiga de bis. Just reciprocate. Good morning, good evening, goodbye, goodbye. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem. I mean, come on. So complicated. And the Rebbe said this. He said, when 2 Jews meet, before they begin the conversation, the first thing is they have to get into an argument. That's the first thing. He used the words Ipchem Estabra. I say Shalom Aleichem, and you're like, nah, it's the exact opposite. It's Aleichem Shalom. Now, once we establish that we are having an argument, 2 things happen. First of all, we know that we're both Jewish. Nobody has to convert. That's the first thing. The second thing we know is maybe now we can engage in a meaningful dialogue. Now, don't try this at home. When your wife says Shalom Aleichem, you say Shalom Aleichem. Your wife says, why did you come home late? Say, because I'm an idiot. And Rabbi YY spoke for longer than he was supposed to, and the food was good. And I quit my diet. He liked that. Okay. But with another guy, you could say Aleichem Shalom. Above the earth, every Jew is different. Rabbi Soloveitchik once said, Taisva says in Menachos, the Gemara says, sometimes you have chas v'shalom, a child born with 2 heads. The question is where he puts on tefillin. So Taisva says, is this theory or is this real? So Taisva says, there's a story in Medrash about Shlomo HaMelech. King Solomon had an issue. A boy, an adult already, with 2 heads came. It's a classic Jewish story. What did he come for? His father died. His father left real estate on Madison Avenue and a little bit in the 5 towns. This boy says, I have 2 heads, so I get a double portion of the inheritance. You understand his issue? I got 2 heads, at least make money. There was no insurance at the time of Shlomo HaMelech. At least I get a double Yerusha. That was the boy. The other boy said, no, just because he has 2 heads, he's 1 kid, he gets 1 portion of the inheritance. There was a huge fight. They come to brilliant King Solomon. What did he do? You know what he did? He blindfolded this man who had 2 heads, and it's Thursday night, and he poured hot cholent on one of the heads. And he said like this, if he's going to scream from both mouths, it means 2 heads, 1 person. 2 heads, 1 organism. But if only the one mouth is going to scream, the other mouth is not going to scream, it's 2 people, he gets a double portion of the inheritance. So Shlomo HaMelech poured hot cholent on him. It wasn't too hot, don't worry. It wasn't too hot. It was like Jewish cholent. It's never too hot. Kiddush was too late, the rabbi's sermon was too long, whatever it is, the cholent is almost hot. But it was hot enough. And the kid, the young man, screamed with both mouths. Shlomo HaMelech said, you have 2 heads, but you're 1 person, you get 1 part of the inheritance. Rabbi Soloveitchik said, what type of story is this? I mean, is this the brilliance of King Solomon to pour hot cholent on people, to figure out if it's 1 person or another person? And he said something profound. He said, the Jewish people don't have 1 head, we have multiple heads. Every Jew within himself has multiple heads, right? The guy who is before dinner is not the same guy after dinner. You know that. I don't talk to people before dinner. I don't talk to them early in the morning. I don't talk to them before yoga, before therapy, before Pilates. Before meditation, before mindfulness, before exercise, before you took your vitamins. I don't talk to you. Everyone has different heads, multiple heads. Rabbi Soloveitchik said that's not the issue. I don't mind if people have multiple heads. You know what the problem is? If when you pour hot water on one of the heads, the other one doesn't scream, then we know it's two separate people. If the other one screams, we know you can have two heads, but you're one. You're one. October 7th, not just hot water, but the fires of Jewish hatred, the likes which we saw in the Middle Ages and the Holocaust, descended unexpectedly on the Jewish community in the south near Gaza. And the fact is that Jewish people all around the world cried out with visceral pain that was hard to imagine. Not all of us have relatives living in the south of Israel. I assume many of you don't even know one name of a person who was living in Kfar Aza, or Be'eri, or in Re'im, or at the Nova Music Festival, or the other kibbutzim. Now we know many names. But then many people didn't know names. Nonetheless, people cried out with visceral pain. Why? Because we may have different heads, but we're one organism. Our enemy knows this. Underground, the roots are interconnected. The Sfas Emes says, B'chol dor v'dor oimdim aleinu l'chaleseinu. But the expression is, Shaloi echad bilvad amad aleinu. Not one enemy alone stands up against us to exterminate Chalila. The Sfas Emes says, read it differently. Shaloi echad bilvad amad aleinu l'chaleseinu. The one thing that really threatens to exterminate us is Loi echad, that we are not echad. Loi echad bilvad. When Jewish people are united, they create a fortress that you can't penetrate, that you can't breach. Simchas Torah last year didn't come in a vacuum. It came following a horrific split in the Jewish world and in the Jewish homeland, which is now being resurrected again. And here came the revolution of the Alter Rebbe and the Rebbe, represented by Colel Chabad, and say, we can't afford this. We can argue, we can have different opinions, we can have different perspectives. We have different heads, but don't split the organism. Because when you split the organism, the enemy will identify right away the Lo Echad. And then you give him or her power that they would have never had on their own. Jews are supernatural people like the sequoias. But for that, we have to remember, under the ground, we're one. Above the ground, argue from today till after Mashiach comes. We'll still argue. I don't care. Under the ground, go deeper. You have to connect to the Yechidah Shebenefesh, to the soul, where there is complete oneness. That type of charity operates in a different dimension, in a different magnetic energy space, in a different frequency. It goes to the soul. It doesn't distinguish. And because it doesn't distinguish, therefore it encompasses and unites. The Gemara says in Baba Basra, some of you are learning Baba Basra, the first chapter, Daf Tes, Daf Yud, Rebbe Lezer, Yoiv Pruta La'ani V'Hader Matzli. Rebbe Lezer used to give charity to a poor person, and then he would go pray. Shenemar Ani B'Tzedek Echze Fanecha. It says in Tehillim, I will only see your face after I give charity. Davening is an encounter with God, an intimate encounter. Before you go in for the intimacy, tzedek, tzedakah. So before davening, and that's why it's brought in halacha, to give tzedakah before davening. The Arizal put in his siddur, and the Alter Rebbe did it too, before davening, to say, Areini mekabel alai mitzvahs asay shel v'afta l'recha kamoich. Asked it Tzemach Tzedek, the grandson of the Balatanya, the founder of the Colel Chabad. It's a beautiful thing, but why before davening? It's a great thing to give tzedakah. Why before davening? This is what he says. He says, davening, the Gemara says in Brachas, was instituted in lieu of the karbanos, in lieu of the offerings in the Beis HaMikdash. What was the law by a carbon? Kol mum boy lo yeratza. If you brought a blemished animal, a blemished goat, a blemished sheep, a blemished cow or ox, missing a limb, lo yeratza, you're not allowed to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. Why? You have to bring a tamim. It has to be whole. Today we're not bringing physical offerings. We're bringing ourselves. Tefillah is, the person is offering his or her heart. So the Tzemach Tzedek says, if you want your tefillah to be accepted, it can't be a balmum, can't be blemished. What does it mean that a Jewish soul or heart is blemished? If I amputate another Jew from my life, if I cut myself off, I'm not on speaking terms with you because I don't like your nose. I don't look at you because you don't daven my nusach. I don't like you because for this reason or that reason, I'm a balmum. I just cut off parts of my organism. How could you go daven? So before davening, the Arizal says, you say, Areini mekabel alay mitzvah zasei shel v'ahavta. I'm one. I'm not a balmum. Now you can go daven. Now there's a self who can daven. When I'm in negative, divisive energy, I can't go pray. Now I could go pray. There's no mum. That's why Rabbi Lezer would give tzedakah. The Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, has in his Tanya a section called the Igeres HaKodesh, letters that he wrote about Colel Chabad. You're talking about letters that were written 230, 220 years ago. So they're historic. There's a letter there where he writes something incredible. We say in the morning before Shema, Zoireya tzedakos, matzmiach, Yeshuos. He plants tzedakos, charity, tzedakah, and matzmiach, he vegetates, produces Yeshua salvations. He says, why is tzedakah called planting? Tzedakah you give, you don't plant, you give it. I don't think Rabbi Duchman takes the tzedakah that you give him and plants it in his garden. What are you going to do with checks in the garden? And even with cash in the garden? Tzedakah you give. What's Zoyreya? Who plants tzedakah? So the Alter Rebbe says this. He says planting is a miracle. You take a seed, an apple tree, a peach tree, a cherry tree. You take a seed, you look at the seed, it looks like a garnished. What's in this seed? It's lifeless, it's numb, it's emaciated, it's tasteless, it's scentless, and it's colorless. And you put it into the soil, and it gets the right moisture, sunlight, air, and what happens? Suddenly a miracle. The seed opens up, and with this earth, suddenly, after some years, you have a tree, splendid, tall, beautiful, exquisite, and the giving fruits. How did this seed produce this? The answer is you didn't keep the seed on your shelf. You took the seed and you put it into the earth. You put it into the earth. Something is transformed and metamorphosized. The full potentiality beyond your imagination emerges. And from this little seed, you have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of fruits. Quantity greater and quality. You could have never tasted this in the seed. So he says, Zoireya tzedakah. That's what charity is. Tzedakah you plant. Where do you plant it? You plant it what he calls in Eretz HaElyona, the divine Mother Earth. I may take a nickel, a dime, $1, $10, $100, $1,000, I plant it. Matzmiach, what comes out of it is beyond what anybody imagines physically and spiritually. And then he says that's true any earth, anywhere you give tzedakah. When you give tzedakah that gets planted in Eretz Yisrael, Chazal say that the earth of Eretz Yisrael is mechuvan, v'zeh shar hashamayim. The Eretz Yisrael is holy because it parallels the heavenly gate, the Beis HaMikdash, and Yerushalayim of heaven parallel Yerushalayim, Beis HaMikdash of earth. So he says, this is already divine earth. So it's already planted in the divine soil. So the Matzmiach Yeshuos is far greater, far deeper. So the charity of Eretz Yisrael for the poor people of Eretz Yisrael, for the desperate, for the destitute, for the needy, for the broken, for orphans, for widows, for widowers, for evacuees, for people who lost their possessions, lost their families, lost their loved ones in the Holy Land. It's a different type of Zirei Tzedakos. And therefore it's a different type of Matzmiach Yeshuos. A different type of Matzmiach Yeshuos. So my dearest friends, beloved brothers and beloved sisters, as we stand here tonight, during the days when our minds and our hearts focus especially on the Holy Land, on the holy city, on the Beis HaMikdash, on the Churban and the brokenness of 1900 years ago and of today, we know that as long as the sequoias stand together, as long as we transcend our egos and we remain focused on who we are as a people, united like never before, determined like never before, Zoireya Tzedakah is planting in the tzedakah of the Eretz HaElyono, with Eretz Yisrael, Matzmiach Yeshuos, then we could be sure that the darkness will be transformed into light. The challenges will be transformed into blessings. And the greatest growth and unity of our people will yet come and shine in the most powerful way. And therefore, on behalf of our people, on behalf of Israel, on behalf of all of our people in Israel who we're all connected to, I, just as a representative, as a channel, thank each and every one of you for following the footsteps of Rebbe Lezer. And every day before davening, whether it's Shachris or Mincha or Ma'ariv or all three of them, or any time of the day, but especially the morning, you actually take that moment to be able to connect to all of our brothers and sisters, and especially our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land, and especially those suffering even more than others because of their difficult financial or emotional, psychological situation. Right when I came here, Rabbi, I'm not so good with apps. I'm not mamish from Reb Sholom's age, but I'm close. So I'm technologically challenged as well. But Reb Zalman showed me the Colel Chabad new app for tzedakah. And I'm a very visual person, so I was very impressed. Because, usually you press $1, $18, and whatever, and you get a thank you note. But here you press 18, and there's like, boom, it's like planting $18 with commotion, with fireworks, with fanfare, with drama. And then they thank you, and there's a whole dinner, like it's a whole mice. I could almost eat the app. I mean, it doesn't taste as good as the steak tonight, but it's geschmack. So this is a good thing to download and to give tzedakah on a daily basis for Colel Chabad. Ani b'tzedek echze panecha. And may we see echze panecha, may we see the face, the gilui, the revelation of Hashem and the Shechina, and the unity of all the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael with the Beis HaMikdash b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen. Thank you.